What makes pumpkin pie so special? Well, I think it's because it takes one of the things that no one probably would ever eat, pumpkin, and turns it into the most delicious thing that you could ever try. Today, I'll be showing you how to make a flaky homemade crust and the perfect pumpkin pie filling to go along with it.
The foundation of any great pie starts with a homemade crust. You can go ahead and use pre-made pie crust if you want, but making pie crust from scratch isn't as much work as you might think. In a mixing bowl, add in 180 grams of all-purpose flour and half a teaspoon of fine salt. Give the ingredients a quick whisk and then add in 1 stick plus 1 tablespoon of cubed and unsalted butter. Separate the cubes of butter and then give them a quick toss to get them coated in flour. Once all of the butter is broken up, you can begin squeezing the flour into the butter using just your fingertips. Now this is totally optional, but if you want to make things a little easier, you can use a pastry blender to help cut the butter into the flour. After 2 to 3 minutes, your bowl of soon-to-be pie dough should look something like this. Very small pieces of butter coated in flour. Kind of looks like a pile of crumbs. Next, add in 3 tablespoons of ice cold water, 1 tablespoon at a time. Giving it a quick mix before adding in the next tablespoon. You know you have enough water when you're able to squeeze together a pile of crumbs and it holds its shape like wet sand on the beach. The pie dough should be able to hold its shape relatively well, so if it crumbles with a light amount of pressure, add additional water a half teaspoon at a time until you're satisfied with its strength. Once properly hydrated, start gathering the dough into one giant piece. You may find you have some dough towards the end that keeps crumbling off. Just add a couple drops of water to this portion, and then it should have no problem sticking to the main piece. Place the dough onto a sheet of plastic wrap and then try to work it into a circular shape. Wrap the dough tightly and check the back side for any cracks. Squeeze the dough together if any have formed, and then chill the dough in the fridge for a minimum of 1 hour, but overnight is best. When ready to roll the crust, take the pie dough out of the fridge and leave it out at room temperature for about 10 minutes. This will make the pie dough more pliable and less prone to cracking. Flour both sides and then roll the dough out using light pressure. One thing I've noticed is that when compared to using a food processor, dough that is made 100% by hand tends to be a little bit more prone to cracking when rolling it out. If your pie dough is cracking excessively, it is possible that it may have needed a little bit more water when mixing the dough, but don't let a little bit of cracking ruin a pie crust. If necessary, you can trim the dough and relocate it to an area that may need more. Make sure to apply flour, as these relocated sections can be quite sticky. When the dough is about 80% of its full size, stop and check for even thickness, then focus on rolling out the thicker areas. When ready to transfer the dough to its pie dish, fold the dough in half again. Place the corner of the dough in the center of the pie dish, and then gently unfold it. Lift the dough from its edges so it can fill the bottom and sides of the dish. Try not to press down on the dough to fill the bottom, because it will cause it to get stretched too thin. Trim off any excess dough, leaving a little more than an inch of overhang. Then go around folding the overhanging dough under itself. And if there are any areas that are a bit thin, you can use some of that excess dough trimming to reinforce it. Lastly, use your thumb and pointer finger to crimp the edge of the crust. Now, if you want to use this crust right away, you absolutely can, but if you want your pie crust to be flaky, it's best to blind bake it. To do that, you'll need to freeze the crust for a minimum of 2 hours. The frozen pie crust should be rock hard. To prepare the pie crust for the oven, line it with a sheet of parchment paper, some aluminum foil, and then fill it with pie weights. Place the frozen crust on the center rack of an oven that has been preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and bake for 15 minutes. When done with the first round of baking, carefully remove the parchment foil and pie weights. Then brush the inside and the edge of the crust with an egg wash. This will help the crust take on a golden brown color and protect the crust from the pumpkin filling. When finished applying the egg wash, use a fork to dock the bottom and side walls of the crust. Now before putting the crust back in the oven, we will need to protect the edges. To shield the crust, grab a long piece of aluminum foil that has been folded in half and use it to wrap around the crust to protect the edge from burning. Place the crust back in the oven at 425 and bake for 15 minutes. Then reduce the temperature to 375 and continue baking until the bottom crust is golden brown, or about 12 to 15 minutes. Now that the pie crust is finished baking, it's time to make the pumpkin filling. To make the filling, in a mixing bowl add one 15-ounce can of pure pumpkin puree, one 14-ounce can of condensed milk, one large egg plus 3 egg yolks, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, some freshly grated nutmeg, and if you have it, an 1/8 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice. Whisk the ingredients together until smooth, and then transfer it into the pie crust. Place the foil shield back around the pie to protect the crust, then bake at 425 for 15 minutes, then reduce the oven temperature to 350 and continue baking for another 30 to 40 minutes. When finished baking, the center of the pumpkin pie should have a slight jiggle or be completely set. Place the freshly baked pie onto a cooling rack. You can further check for doneness by poking with a knife 1.5 inches from the edge. It's okay if the center is slightly underdone because it will continue cooking as it cools. A properly baked pumpkin pie should have a flat and even surface when cooled. Allow the pumpkin pie to cool to room temperature before covering and transferring to the fridge. After chilling in the fridge, there will be some condensation on the surface of the pie, which can be just simply dabbed off with a paper towel. Before serving, it would be a good idea to go the extra mile and make some whipped cream. To make enough whipped cream for half a pumpkin pie, add 150 grams of heavy cream to a bowl, along with 15 grams of sugar, a couple drops of vanilla extract, and a tiny pinch of salt. Whisk the ingredients together until you have semi-stiff peaks. And there you have it, the perfect thing to complement a perfectly baked pumpkin pie. The main things that make this pumpkin pie so good are the condensed milk and the extra egg yolks. The extra yolks make the pie taste richer and have a more creamy texture. And if we take a quick look at the bottom crust, we can see that it is quite flaky thanks to the blind bake. So whether you're looking to spread some joy during the holidays or just craving a slice of pumpkin pie, I hope you give this recipe a try soon.